the opposite of belonging is trying to fit in. It means I'm trying to be somebody I'm not. It is my ego getting in the way that maybe I'm trying to protect or defend some perspective, and it keeps us separated. And once that trust is broken, that has a long tail effect and an impact that I think it's important for people to understand.
Absolutely. The one who shows up with vulnerability is the one who's crushed. The person who's
Yeah,
unable to do that doesn't feel the difference, right?
right.
For them, it's unconscious. Welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. Thank you for joining us for another insightful and deeply meaningful conversation. Goldilocks reminds us that we all innately have the ability to get everything about life just right. As a little girl, she knew how to make sure her food was not too hot or not too cold. She knew how to make sure where she sat and where she slept wasn't too hard or too soft. We all come into this world knowing these boundaries. Our pets know these boundaries. Children know these boundaries, right? And we know how to make sure that we bring our personal presence and God-given gifts to make it just right. But somewhere along the way, the social construct that was established to command and control beats it out of us. And all of a sudden, we're caught up in this boundary setting. And professionally, you need to be this way. Socially, you need to be that way. And at home, you can be your way. And how does that affect our authenticity? How does that prevent us from showing up just right the way we truly are? These are important conversations to have, especially at a time like today. And I am absolutely delighted to have somebody I consider near and dear, a friend of the Goldilocks community, somebody who has sat on the tall chair and called games in the game of tennis, who has been in the world of shaping leadership, but with empathy and compassion. So please welcome my dear friend Mary Lou back to the Goldilocks community.
Oh, Dr. Koch, thank you very much for that beautiful introduction. And it's my pleasure to be with you and in service to your community and all of your followers and fans.
Today is an extra special day for me. It's the first day of our 28th wedding anniversary for my husband and I. And my husband is terminally ill and medically at end of life. So more so than ever, we are thinking of what makes life so beautiful, even when it is this hard. It is kindness, it is compassion, it is empathy, it is love. So let's talk about your life work and what you're currently involved in and why you have chosen to make that your current point.
My focus is on shaping the next generation of leaders based on empathy, vulnerability, accountability, and humility. I used to talk a lot about the word alignment, but what I'm focusing more on is unity. When we become disconnected from ourselves, and I hear a lot about people even struggling to love themselves, that we're coming back into this union within ourselves so that we can be leaders of empathy, vulnerability, compassion with others on our teams. So that's really the focus of my work, is shaping next generation leaders through high performance teaming. And this discussion is also really timely because I just came off from last week finishing a semester with a cohort of 7 PhD students in London who were disconnected from themselves when we started 3 months ago. And now they've even talked about vulnerability as a strength, and their confidence level is elevated. And it was just a beautiful experience to witness their own personal union back to themselves.
That is what actually caught my attention, Mary Lou. The fact that you're traveling the world and building bridges. And to me, the word that comes up is harmony. When we can harmonize, that means we are allowed to keep our difference, but we are harmonizing by accepting but not tolerating. Always am struck by the difference between tolerance and acceptance. In the United States, we talk a lot about the importance of being a tolerant society. Tolerant really means my ways are superior, yours are inferior, but I will allow you to be your inferior self because I am so superior. Tolerance comes from a place of ego and control. Acceptance comes from a place of harmony and letting go. So when you think of the work you are doing to help people harmonize with the very essence of who they are, and then harmonize with everything around them so that they bring what they internally contain forward, how is that landing for them? Because they can't give what they don't have. Therefore, they need to get it for themselves first.
If I can, I want to take just a quick minute for people to understand the difference between empathy and sympathy, because I think there's a nuanced distinction that as I did my coaching training, and it's around, so empathy is I feel with you and I'm having power with you. I want you to find your own agency and power because we each know us best, not the other person. So empathy, I'm in support of someone. Whereas sympathy, when I feel sorry for you, it could unintentionally create a power imbalance that somebody is less than. I want people to understand this difference of how that can happen. So back to your question, is the way we start in the course is we use a lot of models and frameworks, and where I like to start is with something called the competency matrix. We also use Tuckman's stages of group dynamics, and both of those really I'm grounding the students that the discomforts they're having when they're learning something new is normal. Some level of anxiety that they're having is normal. Tuckman's stages of teams are forming, storming, norming, performing. So this flow through some friction is normal. And I found with this particular cohort, when they have these well-researched, well-documented frameworks or containers, I call them, that they can think about, it helps them down-regulate their own anxiety so that they can show up in presence and empathy and vulnerability with others.
So it's interesting you bring up the 4 stages of high performance teams. A lot of times people are so close-minded that if others don't conform to the majority dynamics and they have a different perspective, they are shut out. They are deemed not acceptable in the culture. And they are forced to change because the culture will not change, but you have to change to the culture. And there is this notion that culture is not something that evolves, but outsiders have to fit into the existing culture. Talk to us a little bit about the danger of that and the sense of belonging it destroys.
I love this, and I don't know whether you or your audience know that actually Brene Brown says the opposite of belonging is trying to fit in. It means I'm trying to be somebody I'm not. It is my ego getting in the way that maybe I'm trying to protect or defend some perspective. And it keeps us separated. It keeps us separated from ourselves first and foremost. And then it has an exponential effect to keep us separated from each other. And that's the real danger. So the other thing I'll say is foundational to what we teach is around psychological safety and trust. And I listened to the podcast you had with Leo DeLeon.
Yes.
A short while ago, and he talked about strengths finders, right? And leaning on people's strengths, and then that's the model that we embrace when we put teams together. Is in psychological safety, you use your voice to negotiate of where to show up in your strength and to know what other people's strengths are. And when we bring all of our strengths together, these students talked about, after this teaming experience where one student came in and said actually he had a very cynical perspective on teaming, he now knows he would never want to work alone, and they saw the power of when we team together. We and these So I'll leave it there.
So I'm glad you brought that up, Mary Lou. And you and I have similar career trajectories where you started at 21 in your first role as the woman on the high chair doing what you did. I started at 21 as a management trainee, going into a international financial institution, building the technology platform and managing men over 45. And what I learned through that process, and I came out of the Eastern Society. And so we approach work and life very differently. Yes, I was in the middle of a genocidal war. Yes, they were all on the other side of the war. But our humanity came from the same place. And when I was able to show up from a place of love and compassion, they also showed up from a place of love and compassion. They called me
Yes.
daughter. I called them uncle. And there was such love, and it was okay in the workplace. If somebody was busy, for another person to feed them. If somebody was having a hard day, go and give them a hug. Every time we end a conversation, to tell the other how much we love them. That is an acceptable part of how the Eastern world works, because our divine is inside of us. And love is not something we do, love is who we are. And denying us of who we are is what creates all of these other loops that take us down the path of not belonging, having imposter syndrome, and all of it. And fast forward, I've been in the West now 30 years, and there is such a disconnect. Love is a taboo word, being caring and compassionate. So to me, empathy is feeling and resonating. Compassion is taking one step further and acting in harmony. And so compassion and love and connecting at that very core human level, it is taboo in the workplace. And as I am caring for my terminally ill husband who has Lewy body dementia, that means he has Parkinson's, visual hallucination, and dementia. And when he is in this end of life care facility, he's like a zombie. He can't move, he can't look up, he can't communicate. But the minute I bring him home with me, the love and the connection we have, he can stand up, he can walk, he can talk, he becomes a different person. And I inherently understand from my culture, when you show up with love and engage with another human, our limbic brain starts building bridges. We start creating limbic resonance, and each other's limbic resonance rewires the brain of the other. And we both heal and we both grow. And that connectedness is unbreakable, and it is beyond the physical. And yet, the Western society, the Western construct doesn't want that, because English by itself doesn't have another word for love. And there is only one connotation that is highly sexual that is used. So all of a sudden, language becomes culture. Language is used as the grenade to throw in the middle of human bonding. And then workplaces become these artificial constructs where we are allowed to be human, but our humanity is not allowed to enter. How do you see us trying to fix that when the entire language construct was created for command and control?
Yeah, it's such a great question, because I have a great story from, I worked for an organization called the MITRE Corporation, which is a federally funded research and development center. One of our business units was called Command and Control, but it's this story that I have about the McEnroe archetype, about an engineer who'd been at the company for more than 30 years, and I was put in place to change a process that had been in place for 50 years. And when there is love, there is also no fear. We can't have both at the same time. And in this particular situation, this triggered just so much fear, not only in this person but many others. But he was the big bear. And that expression, meeting someone where there's that, I simply listened to him. And in tennis, checked my ego at the gate. I showed up in all of it, fully present. And when we do that, and I will say, I believe through the Gordon Institute of Engineering Leadership, where we are graduating 30 to 40 leaders every year, I believe we will get to a critical mass. And with this next generation, they're going to demand something very different in the workplace. But when we can use our empathy, our power to be empathetic, to meet someone else and listen. And I say it's often sometimes that maybe nobody has ever listened to this person before. Maybe nobody's ever asked them the questions. And so we can be the person to help make that change. Kouzes and Posner, the one in there for model the way. Model the way. It's the first principle.
Absolutely. It's one of the reasons why I have stayed away from working inside a corporation and consulting, because the minute you become part of a corporation, whether it's private or public, these artificial constructs are forced upon you, and the majority way becomes the way. And if you don't fit into that majority way, you are in so many ways that are mostly, I will say, unconscious biases, because they can only relate to where they come from.
Yes.
It creates so much dissonance instead of resonance. And organizations don't understand that dissonance forces people to fit in and therefore eliminates belonging. And having a role for creating culture and vision doesn't create the culture and vision, right? It is how we each show up. And I have found that when I'm coming from the outside in my consultative capacity, working with the teams, embedded with the teams, I can have the autonomy and therefore have the true impact. Whereas when I go into the organization as an employee, I am in so many different ways pressured to lose my identity and my authenticity. What advice do you have for people who feel the way I feel, and organizations who create that need to separate and bifurcate and keep our authenticity and therefore never become a part of an organization? What advice do you have for organizations that thrust it upon people most of the time without realizing? I'm not saying they do it intentionally. It's the unconscious bias that drives it.
Yes. I mean, I say first and foremost to my students, it is also, look, we may not be able to have the impact at the highest level, but what ripple effect can I start with just the people around me in my team? And that's what I say to my students. That's what I did when I was at MITRE. We're only in control of ourselves. And I had a small team in a matrixed organization and really great people. And I wanted them to come back and work on my team the next year. So a way that I ensure that I get great people to work with me is I co-create this psychological safe place. I lean in. I'm not afraid to be vulnerable. I'm not afraid to lean into others and say, what's your strength? It's not all about me, it's about we, and to keep living that message. And then I would say, look for opportunity. So many larger companies, there can be these strategic initiatives or special projects. And maybe that's a place to show up also in this way, to also have your ripple effect get outside maybe your individual department.
Thank you. I love that, Mary Lou. A lot of times, leaders who are caring and kind can also get focused on results and innovation and success, right? And success in
Mhm.
the Western definition is creating breakthrough outcomes and changing lives. But that pursuit can get so singular that everybody is swept into following that purpose. And sometimes we don't take time for who we are.
Celebrating, like we don't take time to celebrate even the little wins. And I also, in that regard, I encourage people, even as a department manager in Agile, they have something called the retrospective, meaning what went well this month, what could we do better, what are have a celebration about that. It's these little things also that, oh, somebody feels seen and heard and valued, and I'm having an opportunity to do meaningful work, which is also why I feel this connection with our strengths is so important, because that's really who we are. And when we're in situations where we're asked to suppress that, one of my students, her word was
Yes.
soul crushing. And leaders that don't recognize that, I'm sorry, are really doing a disservice to the company. And I think we don't think long term enough. We do think in the quarters or the short term, and we don't think about the long tail of how our actions have long term implications.
So, one of the things I continue to struggle with in this Western
Mm.
world that I live in is that my Eastern belief that there is no such thing as personal versus professional. I'm a human, I show up as a whole human. And if I show up with love and I do what I need to do in a purpose congruent way, then everything falls into place. Versus in this world, if you're not biologically related, why are you thinking of it as personal? And the minute
Mm.
you say it's personal, it's beyond professional, and you're not biologically related, the insinuations are what's going on?
Mm.
Are you having an affair? Are you having inappropriate relationships? Why have you made it personal? And why is it personal when you're not related or when you don't have a history?
Yeah.
And that itself is beyond soul crushing, right? Because
Yes.
it puts such a divisive notion that you can't be authentic. What
If
advice
I
do you
could,
have for me?
yes, and some encouragement. If you haven't heard this, so I love, so Colonel Mike Manning is one of the faculty in the Gordon program, and he is retired military, and he he says over and over and over, when I take care of my people, they take care of the mission. And he does talk about loving our people openly in the classroom. And this is an 11-month program. So these students are hearing this and they're living it. So I hope maybe that's encouraging for you and reinforcing that I think there are places where we're starting to see a shift. And then the other encouraging, again, with my students last week, they were giving their team presentations, and one of the students, the question was, what surprised you from this course? And she basically said, I didn't expect to learn about everybody on the team at such a personal level, and how it actually had such a positive impact on the work. And then she said she had been in consulting for 3 years, and she'd never got to the same level of personal connection in 3 years that she got with her team in 3 months. So I would say, is there some limiting belief that you want to make turn it on its ear and do a 180 about? Or is there a safe space or a safe small group that you can start to experiment in a trusted, safe place to be your whole self and feel soulful, not soul crushed?
I hear you. As a CFO, I have always built those teams. And it was really heartwarming when Mike was first diagnosed and we're in hospitals and he's been paralyzed twice now in the last 8 years, it's always my students and my former teammates who show up. You were there for us. Now it's our turn. Go home, take a shower, take a nap. We're going to be with Mike because they all know Mike. Mike and I
Yeah.
have always brought them and their families home and made sure they felt cared for. Because in a finance organization, people work ungodly hours,
Yeah.
families make sacrifices. And so it was important for Mike and I to bring families into our home and envelop them with our love to show them how much we appreciate the sacrifice the entire family is making. My
Yeah.
teammates' children had my phone number. If your mom or dad says they can't come because they have a deadline, you call me. I will make sure somebody on this team will come because we're all family, right?
Right.
So that's how we grew up. The children, we still to this day get together as families with the grown-up children. We cook, we eat, we celebrate twice a year. We've kept up
Yeah.
that tradition,
Oh, that's beautiful.
and yet not all environments allow it.
No, I think what I hear you talking about too is, and what I'm inviting is there a little pocket somewhere? And I've used this expression when I was trying to introduce something new, and I used it with my students, and I used it in my presentation. I just with some humor and levity. I'm like, okay, play along. Let's just try this and play along and experiment. And some sometimes that language and the invitation can help get people to shift or open their mind a little bit to try it, and then they have to experience the shift. And I found that's the key to unlocking it within each person, because we can never force it
No,
on
we can't
people.
change other people, right? We can only change
No.
ourselves. So, which is
Yeah.
one of the things I love about the way I get to do my job. I don't stay anywhere for more than 3 to 5 years, and I get to do what I need to do
Mm,
and create the shifts the way I show up. And then
beautiful.
walk away knowing that relationships that truly mean something will stay and my work here is done. My last employer, Berkshire Hathaway, when I did the Duracell acquisition, they referred to me as Mary Poppins. You come with a bag of tricks, you fix this household, now you're going to fly away to the next one. Why don't you stay?
And you didn't stay, did you? Yeah. And I think the other phrase I use a lot, Dr. Kaz, is giving space and grace for ourselves and for others. And I do think it's important for us to try and be the change agents. And we know I call it first tracks in the snow, and trying to make those first tracks. It can be hard. But like we said, when we're coming from a place of love and wanting unity and harmony and communion in the world, we just keep going to the next place. And we know we're functioning from the place of our soul and out of love and humanity and humility and harmony.
Thank you, Mary Lou. This has been a important conversation for me, for you, for the society and the times we're in. Everybody is hurting. Everybody wants to feel like they belong somewhere. And in such a transactional, success is money and material society, the peace and harmony is what is compromised. And I personally define success as my place of peace in my state of grace, period. And I do not compromise that for anybody. And that has served me well. So as we bring this direct conversation to a close and open it up for audience, what closing message do you have for people who are hurting and people who are struggling?
I love the point about the peace is please look inward, not outward, because the answers are in the answer. All the answers that you need are inside. Please forgive yourself for anything and everything. Please find love for yourself, because when we can find that and get into that union and harmony within ourselves, then we can show up for others, but most importantly, to take care of oneself, and also not be alone. So I would say make sure that you also have some good people around you who also love you.
Thank you. That is so important. Absolutely, without a doubt. Thank you
Yes.
so much, Mary Lou.
Oh,
I
thank you.
appreciate everything you are
Oh,
and the authenticity with which you show up. And always happy to show up into the Goldilocks community and share your wisdom to help shape a truly meaningful tomorrow. And let's open this up. I know Robin cannot wait to ask her question. Go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm traveling, but I'm pulled over right now. And just love the conversation. And I was beyond thrilled to get into the Zoom room and see that it was Mary Lou, one of our favorite people. It was just really terrific, and happy anniversary, Cass. Makes it all very special and it feels like old home week. So I have kind of like the two questions. I always drop two into one, but you talked about sympathy versus empathy.
mm.
And I'd add in there, what I've heard is the difference between empathy and compassion, where compassion goes a step beyond empathy, and you're taking action to help the person, and how to take appropriate action. Sometimes we are trying to be helpful, but in fact we're not being helpful. The other thing is, I loved what you said about when people are learning something new. And so, of course, there's going to be a level of frustration, maybe a very high level of frustration. And so, how do you help people recognize, oh yeah, I'm going to be frustrated, and it's okay, and I'll get better, and then it'll pass. How do you help work through that process with them?
So I can't take credit for it, but I can share you my short. So it's called the competency matrix, and you may have heard it as unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and then unconscious competence. The analogy I use is, if for anybody who had to learn how to drive a standard or a stick shift car, you're like, and you're like, oh my God, the clutch and the thing and the this and then that. And then all of a sudden it's automatic. So the shortcut words I use are awake, aware. It's going to be awkward for a little while, and then it's going to be automatic.
I like
And
that.
when we are conscious, and it's all about consciousness, we talk a lot in the Gordon program about how leaders need to get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Mm.
And for the PhD students, they're expected to be experts in everything, and so they struggle when they're learning something new. So that model really helped them say, okay, I say it's normal. This is normal. What you're going through is normal. So don't beat yourself up. It's going to take a little time. It's going to be awkward, and then you're going to be able to do it. So that's how and it has worked.
Yeah. That sounds
I,
great. I love that. So awareness, no, let's see. Awake,
awake,
awareness,
aware,
awkward,
awkward,
automatic.
automatic.
I love it.
I,
That's
I do
great.
want to come back to your compassion point with the empathy. And I would say it's not that we have to take action, it's that they have to take action. And this is the power. This is why we don't want sympathy, because we're saying, okay, we can be empathetic and say, okay, and this is what I've done. What is the next baby step? What's the situation? What's going on? What do we, I can work with you, but what do you think are the next 1, 2, or 3 steps you need to do? No, not me, them, but we can help them figure it out, and we can walk with them in their action. And somebody might say, well, could you be my accountability partner for that? Sure, but you have to take the action. And that's
Mhm.
what I want to add for the empathy,
I love
compassion.
the way you phrased it, Mary Lou, because you become the conduit for the transformation, but you let them take their journey in their own way so that they become transformed. The image I have for myself is when the cocoon needs to be opened and the butterfly need to emerge. If you help the butterfly emerge, then the wings are not strong enough and the butterfly won't survive. So we have to facilitate, but allow them to break free from where they are, because that's where resiliency is built. That's where their own power is realized. So thank you. Thank you for emphasizing the need to be a conduit. But you also brought up the question of accountability partner. And a lot of times when organizations set up accountability partners and people are paired up, people don't always realize the accountability partner role is a trusted space, and you can't pull your organizational title and role card and then go run around, talk about things that were discussed in an accountability partner closed, confident conversation, because then that breaks the trust. It breaks the sense of belonging and has the polar opposite effect of having accountability partners. So as we close, I want you to share some thoughts on how organizations can avoid that, and well-intentioned individuals break that accountability partner promise, and how can they bring about the change in themselves to be the true accountability partner?
Yeah, so I would say, so first of all, I'd call it sacred trust. Sacred trust. And I think it's, being really clear about the definition of what that is. And it's also non-hierarchical. There is no hierarchy in that relationship. One of the tenets in my book is I can't lead others if I can't lead myself. The accountability partner is the shepherd to help the person lead themselves, in the most beautiful analogies of that. So I think definition is really clear. And I'll share back from tennis and what I talk about. There's this Dunbar's number is about how many relationships we can have. And at the center is one trusted relationship. And in tennis officiating, it was very, very competitive. And I think it's interesting, as I went around doing research and talking for my book and other umpires, each one of us as top officials in the world, we had one trusted person. And it was, you had, I'm dating myself, but Get Smart and the Cone of Silence. You didn't dare, nothing went beyond the two of you. And once that trust is broken, that has a long tail effect and an impact that I think it's important for people to understand. And it's a real violation of the relationship. And Judith Glaser, the founder of Conversational Intelligence, she talks always about relationship over tasks. And the only thing that matters in life is our relationships. That violation of trust is also something that can be soul crushing for someone who's so vulnerable.
Absolutely. The one who shows up with vulnerability is the one who's crushed. The person who's unable to do that doesn't feel the difference, right?
Right.
For them, it's unconscious.
Yeah. Lack of consciousness, awareness, presence.
Thank you so much, Mary Lou. This has been an amazing conversation. Very timely, very culturally and socially and international societally relevant. At a time where we truly need to start seeing each other's humanity instead of the outer wrappings. And
Absolutely.
I'm grateful for you to be willing to have this very difficult, but really, really important conversation that builds resonance and harmony in a very diverse, multilingual, multicultural, everything society. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I hope this was in service to you. And again, congratulations on your anniversary. And the last thing I'll say is I'm seeing evidence of it in the world. And I think that's another important piece to convey as we sign off. I'm seeing evidence of it in the world.
Absolutely. And I see it in the young people when I'm teaching, because I do have another life as an educator. So that is the encouraging part, right? We can't fix the broken adults, but we can fix the next generation that's coming up so that they don't break. They have the tools and the wherewithal and the resilience. So to our
Absolutely.
audience out there, connect with yourself. Find your inner peace by connecting with the divine already inside of you. There is no such thing as an imposter syndrome. There is no such thing as being the other. You are created for a purpose, and the energy and the power of your creation is still inside of you. Connect with that, tap into that, own that, show up with it, and live the life that works for you, resonates for you, so that you embrace your peace in your state of grace. And anything that disrupts your peace is not worth it. It is not worth it, regardless of what window dressing it comes in. So go out there and find your peace, make your peace, and live in your place of peace.